In the seemingly peaceful town of Ottumwa, Iowa, a horrifying tale of obsession shattered the quiet on May 20th, 2020. Tracy Mondo, a loving mother and vibrant member of the community, was brutally murdered in a senseless act of rage. Her killer, Michelle Lee Boat, a woman consumed by jealousy and blinded by the belief that violence could mend her broken marriage. What started as a bitter love triangle spiraled into a deadly ambush that stunned everyone who knew them. Beneath the surface of a troubled relationship, a storm of obsession, betrayal, and emotional unraveling brewed, ending in a tragedy that would haunt Ottumwa forever. This is not just a story of murder. It's a haunting reminder of how unchecked emotions can lead to irreversible consequences. Born on March 18, 1973, Tracy Throgmartin Mondo lived a life defined by perseverance, love, and quiet strength. A proud mother of four and grandmother to several, Tracy grew up in Ottumwa, Iowa, a small town where resilience was a way of life. Though she left high school early, she never stopped striving for more. Tracy later earned her GED and became a certified nursing assistant, juggling that role with a part-time job to support her family. Her dedication to caring for others shone through in everything she did. Known for her warmth, kindness, and willingness to help anyone in need, Tracy left a lasting impact on her community and was deeply cherished by friends, co-workers, and neighbors alike. In the early months of 2020, as the world slowed down and people turned to social media for connection during the COVID-19 pandemic, Tracy's life took an unexpected turn. While scrolling through Facebook, she met Nick Boat, a man from nearby Pella, Iowa. They bonded over their shared love for the outdoors, and what started as a friendly conversation quickly blossomed into something deeper. Before long, the two had moved in together, bringing new light and joy into Tracy's life. It felt like a fresh start, a long-awaited chapter of peace and companionship after years of hard work and struggle. But behind that happiness was a storm brewing. Nick's estranged wife, Michelle Boat, had not come to terms with their separation. Fueled by jealousy and emotional turmoil, Michelle began to unravel, her anger spilling over in social media posts and through obsessive behavior, including following Tracy. That tension erupted one tragic night in May 2020, when witnesses saw a heated confrontation near Tracy's truck. What should have been a story of new beginnings ended in unimaginable heartbreak. On the evening of May 18, 2020, what began as a heated exchange took a deadly turn in the quiet town of Pella, Iowa. In a back alley near an apartment complex, emotions boiled over. Michelle Boat, overwhelmed by jealousy and heartbreak, confronted Tracy, her ex-husband's new partner. According to Michelle, it was an act of self-defense, but investigators would soon uncover a far more disturbing truth. Fueled by rage, Michelle attacked Tracy with a knife, stabbing her in a fit of uncontrollable emotion. A witness had called 911 around 8:20 p.m., reporting two people arguing near 101 Glenwood. When officers arrived, they discovered Tracy inside a vehicle, slumped back in the driver's seat with her seatbelt still fastened. Despite officers' efforts to revive her, it was too late. Tracy had succumbed to multiple stab wounds, one to her chest and several defensive cuts on her hands, revealing the terrifying struggle she faced in her final moments. The scene painted a harrowing picture of a life taken far too soon, all in the name of jealousy and heartbreak. The investigation quickly led police to a chilling discovery. Tracy Mondo lived in the Glenwood apartment complex with Nick Boat, the man she had recently started a relationship with. She'd only just relocated to Pella from Ottumwa, hoping for a fresh start. But that hope was shattered the moment she pulled into her parking spot. Tracy never even had the chance to unbuckle her seatbelt. When officers found her, she was still strapped in, slumped against the driver's seat, her life stolen in a matter of moments. Witnesses at the scene reported seeing a heated confrontation between two women, Tracy, seated inside the vehicle, and another woman standing just outside. Shouts were heard, and one haunting line rang out, "He doesn't belong to you." Then, the suspect sped away in a grey four-door Cadillac. It didn't take long for police to piece the clues together. Based on witness descriptions and the vehicle's details, they had a strong suspicion about the identity of the woman behind the wheel. What began as a domestic dispute had erupted into a devastating act of violence, one fueled by obsession, heartbreak, and a refusal to let go. Just months before her life was tragically cut short, Tracy had already voiced her fears. In March 2020, she reported a chilling encounter to police, an encounter that left her deeply shaken. Tracy explained she had been seeing a man named Nick Boat, whose marriage to Michelle Boat had recently ended. What terrified Tracy was Michelle's sudden appearance in Ottumwa, nearly 40 miles from Pella, seemingly tailing her every move. Concerned for her safety, Tracy called the police and asked them to meet her at a local gas station. The fear in her voice was enough to raise serious concern. It all began when Tracy accidentally sent Nick a friend request on Facebook in February 2020. What started as a digital mishap turned into a whirlwind romance, one that escalated quickly. By early March, they were on their first date, and within weeks they were living together. But their fast-moving love story was shadowed by a storm. Police had already received reports suggesting that Michelle was struggling to come to terms with the end of her marriage, and Tracy's name, tragically, was caught in the middle of that growing storm. Before tragedy struck, disturbing patterns had already begun to emerge, patterns that pointed directly to Michelle Boat. In the months leading up to Tracy Mondo's death, Michelle had repeatedly violated a no-contact order and was even charged with domestic violence in March 2020. According to both Tracy and her partner Nick Boat, Michelle had been stalking them around town, making their everyday lives feel anything but safe. After Tracy's life was taken, investigators wasted no time. Their search led them straight to Michelle's home. Outside sat a grey four-door Cadillac, matching witness descriptions from the crime scene. Police immediately noticed something suspicious. The car was still warm, and there were visible traces of blood on the exterior. When Michelle answered the door, she appeared freshly showered, wearing a bathrobe and with her hair wrapped in a towel. A search of the home revealed freshly washed clothes in the machine, and in a chilling twist, a pair of latex gloves stained with what appeared to be blood hidden inside the bathroom toilet tank. Police secured surveillance footage from May 18th. It captured Michelle showing up at Nick's workplace, Vermeer Corporation, less than an hour before Tracy was killed. More footage showed Michelle's vehicle tailing Tracy's in and out of the company parking lot. Tracy had dropped by to visit Nick, completely unaware she was being followed. Both vehicles left at 8:10 p.m. Just 10 minutes later, a frantic 911 call came in reporting an altercation. Forensic testing confirmed that the blood found on and inside Michelle's car belonged to Tracy. With mounting evidence pointing toward her, Michelle Boat was charged with first-degree murder. Michelle Boat pleaded not guilty to the charge of first-degree murder, even though she admitted to stabbing Tracy. In her defense, Michelle claimed she was emotionally overwhelmed and heartbroken after seeing her estranged husband with another woman. She told the court that witnessing them kiss pushed her over the edge, and in a moment of emotional distress, she simply snapped. But prosecutors painted a far more chilling picture. According to Marion County Attorney Ed Bull, this wasn't a crime of passion. It was a deliberate, premeditated act. He argued that Michelle was scorned, seething, and obsessed, unable to cope with the fact that her husband had moved on. The evidence, he said, would prove that Michelle had carefully planned every step leading up to Tracy's tragic death. The courtroom heard that Michelle had stalked Tracy earlier that same day. She followed her movements, watched her at a Burger King drive-thru, then trailed her to Nicholas Boat's workplace. There, she witnessed the couple meeting for dinner. Rather than walking away, Michelle kept following Tracy, this time back to her apartment complex. The prosecution didn't hold back. She hunted, she gloved up, and she plunged the knife into Tracy's heart, Bull told the jury. This was no accident. This was murder. As the trial unfolded, chilling new details were revealed about the events leading up to Tracy Mondo's tragic death. The court was told that Michelle Boat ambushed Tracy the moment she pulled into her apartment complex, so quickly that Tracy was still wearing her seatbelt when she was attacked. Blood evidence found both inside and outside Michelle's car tied her to the scene. And in a haunting detail, Tracy was discovered clutching a handful of hair in her final moments. DNA later confirmed it belonged to Michelle. Although the murder weapon itself was never recovered, investigators did find latex gloves in Michelle's bathroom, hidden in the toilet tank. The prosecution pointed to this as proof that the attack wasn't impulsive. It was premeditated. Further damning evidence came from Michelle's own home, a calendar marking each day since her husband had left her, and warning texts she had sent Tracy, telling her to stay away from Nick. That night, Michelle had gloves, binoculars, and a knife already in her car, signaling what prosecutors described as a calculated and deliberate act. This wasn't a sudden loss of control. It was the final step in a plan fueled by obsession. Nick Boat took the stand and recounted how an accidental friend request turned into a life-changing connection. According to Nick, Tracy had meant to add someone else on Facebook but mistakenly clicked on his profile. When he responded, she was surprised, but they quickly hit it off. After exchanging messages, Tracy gave him her number, and they arranged a phone call that led to their first date on March 8th. That day, they bonded while searching for deer antlers near Roberts Creek, a fitting start for two people who loved the outdoors. Nick told the court, "Talking to her felt like reconnecting with an old friend. When we finally met, the chemistry was instant." At the time, Nick was still living with his wife of 20 years, Michelle Boat, and their two teenage kids. But by April, he had moved in with Tracy. Nick described his marriage as troubled from the beginning, emotionally strained, and filled with tension. He testified that Michelle was controlling, frequently brought up her ex-husband, and was overly strict with the children. Tired of the conflict, he finally told Michelle he was leaving. Their separation came just 3 days after his first date with Tracy, a fresh start that would soon take a tragic turn. Just days after Nick left the family home, the situation took a disturbing turn. According to court testimony, Michelle allegedly told Nick she refused to divorce him, and then physically attacked him. He was left with bruises on his back and a cut near his left eye. The assault led to a no-contact order being issued, barring Michelle from approaching or communicating with Nick. But that order was repeatedly ignored. Michelle violated it at least 4 times, by calling Nick and even showing up at his workplace uninvited. Nick admitted on the stand that he couldn't understand why Michelle was so desperate to get him back, especially given the rocky state of their marriage. "I don't understand," he said, "because she never loved me." Prosecutors argued that Michelle's violent actions weren't random, they were calculated. Assistant Marion County Prosecutor Jared Harmon told the jury, "This was intentional, it was malicious, and it achieved what she wanted, to eliminate the one person she believed was standing between her and Nick Boat." The prosecution made it clear, this was no crime of passion. It was a carefully planned act meant to remove Tracy from the picture, permanently. During closing arguments, the prosecution delivered a powerful message. Michelle Boat didn't act because of some sudden, irresistible provocation. She was the provocation. They painted a picture of someone who didn't lose control in the heat of the moment, but rather someone who was driven by a deep, festering resentment. According to them, Michelle wasn't provoked. She was the provocation. The defense didn't deny Michelle's responsibility. They admitted outright, "Michelle Boat is the one who had the knife. Michelle Boat is the one who stabbed her." But they pushed a different narrative. This wasn't premeditated. They claimed Michelle snapped in an emotional storm after seeing her estranged husband with another woman. Yes, the couple had separated, but they were still legally married after 20 years together. The defense urged the jury to step back and consider the timing. March 2020. The pandemic had just begun, and the world was gripped by fear and isolation. For Michelle, everything collapsed at once. Her marriage, her sense of normalcy, and the stability of everyday life. "Each of you, remember back to March of last year," they told the jury. "How scary your world was. The fear, the chaos, the isolation that we all felt in the early days of the pandemic. That's where Michelle was 69 days before the 18th of May. So that's the backdrop, that's the context, that's the big picture." They asked the jury to view the tragedy through that lens, a woman spiraling in a world already falling apart. As the trial unfolded, the court was told that Michelle Boat's world had completely unraveled. Not only had her husband of 20 years left her, but the pandemic had hit, isolating her further from friends, family, and support. Then came another blow. She lost her job in the hospital's laundry department. With no income, no stability, and no one to turn to, Michelle had just $6 to her name when she was arrested. Her defense attorney didn't ask for pity. He said clearly, "I'm not asking you to feel sorry for Mrs. Boat. I'm not asking for mercy, because what she did was unthinkable. She stabbed a woman who was strapped in her car with no way to defend herself, then drove away and left her to die. That's not mercy. I'm asking you to understand the why." Taking the stand, Michelle opened up about the crushing emotional weight she had been carrying. She described the loneliness, the heartbreak, the feeling of her life falling apart piece by piece. "It felt like my entire world walked out the door," she said tearfully. "No more holidays together, no more future. I just snapped. I grabbed the knife, I stabbed her, then I dropped it." Her testimony painted the picture of a woman not excusing her actions, but struggling to explain how despair led her to a moment she couldn't undo. In their final appeal to the jury, the defense argued that Michelle Boat should not be convicted of first-degree murder. They acknowledged her responsibility for Tracy's death, but insisted that the events of May 18, 2020 were not the result of a calculated plan, but a tragic moment of emotional collapse. "We're not asking you to excuse her," the defense said. "We're asking you to hold her accountable, but only for what the evidence truly supports, and that's manslaughter, not murder." They urged jurors to consider how a reasonable person might act under intense emotional pressure, especially during a time as turbulent as the early months of the pandemic. But the jury saw it differently. After just 45 minutes of deliberation, they returned a verdict of guilty on the charge of first-degree murder. Michelle Boat was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Tracy Mondobau's tragic death at the hands of Michelle Lee Boat is a haunting example of how powerful emotions, left unchecked, can lead to devastating consequences. What began as a personal conflict unraveled into a shocking act of violence that forever changed lives. The courtroom drama that followed uncovered a heartbreaking mix of obsession, heartbreak, and a desperate need for control. This case stands as a somber reminder of why emotional wellness and open communication are so important. It calls attention to the danger of letting jealousy and rage take the wheel, and reminds us all to value peace, seek help in times of struggle, and hold close the moments that matter most. If you found this video compelling, leave a like and your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to subscribe and watch our other videos.